All right, we're all live. Somebody want to give us a official sound check?
Check.
Well, no, I'm
Check
saying like
one.
somebody want to listen and see if there's an official sound.
Oh. See.
Hey, it's working.
Cool. Oh God, Ethereum's back up too. By the way, I get those fun little
Notifications.
notifications from Coinbase.
Yeah, I only follow Bitcoin on there
Yep.
just to feel something.
So if I go and for all of those that want to, we can go now and share the stream. So I'm gonna go here.
Should be good.
Time to share the stream. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Sharing the stream with the folks. You got to share the stream with your friends before you actually start talking about the stream on the stream, right? You know? That's how this works, right?
I mentioned to some friends earlier at like 7 that we were going to get on here.
Yeah, but now you actually have a link you can send. Well, you had a link you could send at 7 o'clock because Chris posted it that was going to be live then. It's just, we're actually live now. Regardless, so we are live. Those of you noticing, we have who have watched before, we do have a third person sitting with us. Those of you noticing, we have make sure we don't have an echo that way. We do have a third person. Now I can actually monitor chat. It is someone who will be appearing much more often, as he will likely be doing a lot of testing for us. Kind of clutch, nice to have, always a good thing, right? That is
Always.
Donald Blackman. He is here for the fun stuff. What graphics card do you have up there?
That is my good old trusty RX 480.
Nice.
Old reliable.
Oh, faithful. We have some we have some other things that you can get to test out here in a little while. That's for sure. Of course, if Chris pulls this next one out of his booty hole and helps some people out with getting some cards, Chris might have a card stock of testers available to him. You know, that might be something intriguing. Of course, I'm sure we'll talk about these things afterwards. But this is episode 14 of Not Your Typical IT Guys. Don't call me for IT support. It is hosted by Chris Touchberry and Brad Medlin, and now we're soon to be adding in as a somewhat regular host, I would imagine. Possibly doing some individual videos on his own, Donald Blackman as well. But this was started as a workstation and work tech podcast, and that's what it mostly is. We do get into some of the how do you say that, Chris? Some of the gaming aspects of things, but that's because a lot of times when you compare gaming to work and what people actually do when they do work, then sometimes that does have a lot of crossover. So we want to take the time and kind of discuss these things. One of the coolest things that we have to start out tonight with, the episode title is Intel heating up for episode 14. We kind of have to go with that title because right now they really are. Not going to say that they're great. We are going to kind of go over the new quote unquote king of mainstream, the Radeon Pro 6400 launch that just occurred, and we're going to talk about that with some degree of intrigue, I think. So, and I want to bring it up and just discuss it for a few minutes before we go over the actual launch details behind it. But it's a PCI Express 4.0 by 4 card. So, a lot of what I've seen and a lot of folks that I've talked to out there were telling me that prior to this launch, this chip was not designed to be a desktop chip. It was really designed to be like a laptop, an entry-level laptop workstation kind of thing. So think of it kind of like the since I've got that list up, like the T500, T600, T1200 type card, Chris. I mean, you know how laptops are. You know, you can think about it kind of like that. It wasn't designed to really stand out as a big boy kind of deal. I mean, it wasn't, but it is. If you think about it, if you have a new build machine out there that's got PCI Express 4.0, it's not really a bottleneck for anything. I mean, an Alder Lake workstation setup or a Ryzen 5 workstation setup, Ryzen 3, you know, Alder Lake i3 kind of setup. This really could be that entry level card that pushes those, you know, gives you some of those discrete card benefits that you need. The one thing about desktop, and I think looking at laptops and the way Intel is going with laptops right now, I think that's why they made this a desktop card. So I'll mention it to you, Chris, and you might agree with me. So Alder Lake's desktop parts all come with 32 execution unit GPUs when they're built in, right? All of us can agree that's pretty garbage, right? I mean, Donald, and I'm sure Donald would agree too, like a 32 execution unit laptop GPU or desktop GPU is the integrated GPU is kind of garbage at this point in time. So realistically, that 6400 is not designed to compete with that. The problem is in laptop where it was designed to go, Intel has upped the execution count on every single one of their integrated graphics cards. They're integrated tied to the chip directly. It's the reason that they went with 6 cores instead of 8 P cores with the Alder Lake lineup, is so they could put a 96 execution unit GPU on board. So there's some comparisons there. Bringing us back to the Alder Lake discussion. So as we jump over to our first article of the day, we have the fact that a Alder Lake Celeron has decided to go and beat the likes of the 10900K in a single core score. Yep. Now, people might look at you and go, that's a 2-year-old card. That's a 2-year-old chip. Why does this matter? Well,
because it's a $42 chip versus like a $500 chip.
Yes. And it has a 3.5 gigahertz base clock. It's the bottom of the barrel Alder Lake chip. And it is better than the best of the best from, really, it's not even 2 years ago, Chris. It's really like 18 months ago. I mean, it was launched in, the 10 series was launched in what, December? Or November, October, November of 2020, I mean.
When did we built Carbon Thunder?
No, March. It was launched around the March time frame.
Yeah.
Now it wasn't available though until the June July time frame, realistically.
Yeah.
But it was launched around March.
Yeah.
I'd have to look to find the exact times. But realistically, 18 months. I mean, it's less than 24 months old. I know that much. Because I remember that the 11900K to the Alder Lake launch wasn't even a year. It was like 8 months. So, I mean, even if it is 2 years, just barely 2 years at this point, it's a Celeron versus the tippy top of the stack. Now, what does that mean? You're not going to go seeing this Celeron running circles around a 10900K, guys. Come on, But this is a work tech podcast, so we cover things from a different perspective. The biggest thing that we cover these things from is we want to look at things from how will this benefit you in the real world? And the answer to that is, for people that just want a desktop to do like Word and, Excel basic stuff. I mean, Internet Explorer, companies that want to build desktops that are workstations that are designed in that functionality, These things are perfect for that. Like I said, we're talking about 2 year ago top performance single core scores, and it's got 2 of those single cores. So I mean, yes, once again, it's not going to beat a 10900K in certain CAD applications. It's just not.
But it's like more than a tenth. It's less than a tenth of the price.
And it's for general purpose like machines. Pair this with 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, and you can go to town. That's the purpose of this kind of chip, and that's what makes it huge. Oh yay! I don't want to see notifications, but I mean it's a Celeron. Like I said, this is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that's okay. It competes and was only 5% slower than the 5600G. Okay, remember, Chris, the 5600G. That's a Zen 3 APU. That's like kind of where things are supposed to be. Doing well. And it was slightly faster than a freaking 3800 XT.
Wow.
I mean, guys, once again, this part is available for $60. And it's beating it's beating stuff that was launched last year that was supposed to be better than it. That should have been better than this. These things are garbage. A garbage APU. And it's competing with APUs and single core performance and better than some top stack R7 chips that were doing really well. That should go to tell you this is what this thing was for. It's a generic, very cheap, general purpose. Throw it in a bunch of machines and launch it.
I'm watching this video that's on the bottom of the screen, and I don't agree with everything that it's saying.
Which one? The
It was a little graphic about like Intel is better for gaming, AMD is better for this thing, core speed matters more than core count. Like, these are all very broad statements.
Yes, I hate when people do that because
and pre-Alder Lake, well, I don't actually remember if Rocket Lake was faster than Ryzen 5000 in gaming.
It was, but it was only because it was designed to be. It was a garbage chip that was like anything below the i9 was garbage. And you really shouldn't have got the i9 because it was a regression in multi-core score from the i9 of the previous year because he lost 2 threads. That's right. So I mean, if you were to really take the Alder Lake CPUs, what they've done is they took a 10900K, a 10-core CPU, right? They took those bottom two cores of that 10-core CPU and whacked them off and replaced them with 2 8-core or 2 4-core tiles, if you want to call it that, inside of that processor that are basically what's it called? They're atom cores, because they figured out a while back that you could put 4 of these atom core designs into a single big core. And all of a sudden they realized that now that they were moving up to this new architecture, it was very close. And so that's the kind of unfortunate thing to realize, is that they were, how do I say it? These atom cores are now of a Skylake-esque IPC performance, and actually a little bit better when tuned clock for clock. So if they could fit 8 of those things there and then put 8 big cores that had big IPC jumps, they realized this is the way we need to do things. I mean, and Alder Lake's Golden Cove design is huge uplift over Skylake. So I mean, that's the way to look at those things.
Sounds like a good time to go into this thing on Raptor Lake.
You are on top of it, my man. So because we talk about things that we're talking about the Alder Lake conversation and whatnot, because this is a lot of these things talk, gaming performance and how things perform with that gaming centric setup. I saw a great, I can't remember who the engineer on it was that when I was watching the conversation about it, but so move over 3D cache. This is a conversation from Hot Hardware. It says move over 3D cache. Intel Raptor Lake could pack a huge cache upgrade for gaming. Well, gaming is not the only place that improves. Gaming is one of the nice things about it, but it's not the only place where cache is effective. Realistically, gaming is just one of the places. But so what he would say is, as you're designing core architectures, one of the last things you do, and if you go back and actually look through some of Intel's product pages, and even AMD, usually as they run out of things to innovate, and I'm quoting innovate on, usually as they run out of things to innovate on, the last thing that they start to do is up the cache amount, because more memory close to the processor makes the processor faster. Always has, always will.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like anything else, in the world. The closer you can keep memory to stuff, the faster it's going to be. That goes for VRAM, that goes for everything. So now as we talk about it this way, talk about this here. So Raptor Lake, what we kind of have heard and somewhat have been some things that have been talked about. Essentially, Raptor Lake is a improved core architecture for the, it's called the Raptor Cove instead of Golden Cove. So it's an improved core architecture for Raptor Lake. And it ups the E-core count from 8 to 16. Obviously, that's all completely rumor mill, but that's what we're hearing. I mean, that's kind of the discussion that's out there. Should that be the case? Now, AMD is saying that to improve their Zen 3 CPUs and give them some performance improvement, they created the 5800X 3D, which is where they stacked an extra 64 or 96 megabytes of L3 cache. Let's see if this article tells us and reminds us.
It's 64.
64 to 3. That's what the.
That's what the article's saying.
No, but that's AMD. Is that 64 onto AMD, or is that 64 for?
64 for AMD.
Yep. Yeah, the Team Red's response was to slap an extra 64 megs of L3 cache. That's a way to get more performance out of a processor. That is one way. Now, all of a sudden, we're hearing in these, from a leaker. And like I said, guys, until the dang thing comes out, don't trust anything you hear from leaks. But what we're hearing is that they're now going to slap it, instead of going from the Alder Lake setup, they're going to add an extra 3 megabytes of cache in L3 space on top of increasing the 1.5 megabyte cache in L2 space to 2 megabytes, and then giving 4 megabytes of L2 to the actual small core E-cores. So that means that your combined L3, L2, which is not your L1 cache. L1 cache is the closest cache to the core itself. All right. L2 is typically shared in some form or factor with the ring bus. L3 is also typically shared with the ring bus. All right. So to remind you, Intel, we're going to take a little mini deep dive. Donald, do you know what the ring bus is?
I would say I'm not too familiar with it.
Okie dokie.
Myself.
Well, we're going to go to WikiChip because this is a great way to look at older
rabbit hole.
Yep, it's a rabbit hole. It's a mini rabbit hole, but it's something it's worth explaining to people and letting them see. Let's see if I can get it there faster. Okie dokie. So Intel, way back when, introduced, and I remember I used to look at this. Okay, so here is Intel's, this is a Skylake version, but here's Intel's way of doing things. And this is a generic block diagram, okay? But they use this thing called the ring bus. All right? That ring bus, you see, it connects all of the, it's basically, for lack of a better word, think of it like a copper ring that data flows around constantly. But they can make that speed that it moves extremely fast, and data can move over that pipeline extremely fast. People that want to know how this differs from, say, Skylake X or Xeons at the time, was that Skylake and Xeons were the first time that they moved from ring bus to what they call a mesh architecture. So if you go look at the Skylake Xeon design down here, you see that it's got a multi-channeled mesh effect. The LCC, it's got a mesh that way. The HCC, it's got a mesh that way. The XCC, it's got a mesh network. All right, but the data, it was the mesh. The mesh was acted a lot like a ring, in that it was two-way traffic. It was just different in the ring. The ring was always faster though, because it was one-way traffic that just zoomed around. Think of it like a highway. If you have a one-lane highway and everyone's moving in the same direction and everything is moving at a high rate of speed, and then you have a single exit that everybody just gets off and a single merge lane that everybody gets on, things work really well and really efficiently. You're always going one direction. When you have a two-lane highway, there's a little bit more of a bottleneck. This is also where the Infinity Fabric within AMD sometimes slows things down from a memory bandwidth perspective. Okay? So what they're talking about now, though, is with that ring architecture now, they are increasing the cache and making a massive move to compete with Vcache from AMD, which I believe is supposed to come on all of the Zen 4 CPUs. I don't know that it will, but it's supposed to. And that'll help out some. But one thing that I think we've kind of learned recently is from a client computing and I think AMD's learning this too, from a client computing perspective and a gaming perspective and a workstation perspective that's not needing massive core counts and so on and so forth, you don't really need more than 8 performance cores. So that's why there's a rumor out there that you might see like an 8 big core, 16 little core design. That's what we're getting with Raptor Lake most likely. And Gracemont is not hyper-threaded, but potentially we could see the next gen, whenever we get after Raptor Lake, whatever that is, we could potentially see that post Raptor Lake we could get a Atom core that's hyper-threaded. And so maybe we have the same kind of architecture of the Meteor. I think it's Meteor Lake's the next one after that, where it's 8 Meteor Code cores, and then 8 Gracemont Next cores. But those Gracemont Next cores also get hyper-threading. So you go from, 8 cores and 8 big cores, 16 little cores, and 32 threads to 8 big cores, 16 little cores, and be 16 is 32 plus another 16 is 48 threads. So, and once again, that would be huge. We could see that. Is that realistically coming? I don't know. I don't think that's really in the cards right next. They may go and up it to 24 little cores to compete in the next round with AMD. But Intel has figured out or figures that their little cores are fast enough to be able to compete in multi-core threading applications, and that's all they need. None of this relates anything to the server marketplace or to the Xeon marketplace, which is going to be crazy. Xeon is going to be absolutely up for new details and things that are coming out. One of the biggest problems that you have, though, and this is something that we're going to talk about in the next article, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up as I swing back to you guys so that we can talk about this with the three of us in the frame. One of the biggest things, is that there's a new technology that's coming out. That's a new gate and transistor type of combination that is going to allow newer CPUs to use 85% fewer transistors in the same kind of setup to get the same performance. So one of Moore's laws was that you would see you would see doubling of transistors every node shrink, every 2 years. And that's been pretty accurate, fairly accurate. You double the transistors every node shrink. Well, this is saying here that you could potentially eliminate 85% of the need for that in the node. And that would be huge for being able to get higher performance out of the nodes that we're currently at right now. If you could reduce the need for 85% of your transistors to do the same kind of calculations, the same kind of IPC, that alone would make some very, very big differences. And so if you've heard what a FinFET is, or what that, so transistors, which right now we're using what's called I can't remember what the fin part is, but it's a field effect transistor, which is that's the FET. Those are some of those things that you can look at and watch around, but this is a way to dramatically reduce the block sizes, and you can really up the functionality of a transistor. Okay, so think about it this way. I'm going to read directly from the article. It says, quote, "The simplicity of the transistor does have a caveat. Functionality. While transistors can assume many different functions, these functions are in themselves simple. It's from the addition of many small, simple transistors together in integrated circuits that the higher order performance and more complex workloads can be unlocked. A certain number of transistors arranged in a certain way can be turned into a Zen 3 core. They can also be turned into an NVIDIA CUDA core or additional blocks of memory caches." So remember, Intel's tick-tock and later talk, whatever you want to call it, strategy for when we got to 14 nanometer. In those terms, the TOC, the microarchitecture change, essentially corresponds to the performance improvements that can be unlocked by rearranging and redesigning transistor blocks. A tick, a change in manufacturing node, increases the amount of transistors available for engineers to use in the ever-increasingly complex circuits. So what they're talking about now is basically as Intel's tick strategy was going away because it was harder to tick, rearranging those blocks became, is difficult. It's something that's hard to do. So here's an opportunity. Why not change the way the transistor fundamentally works? And I think that's a really positive way to look at it. And they do show you a block diagram of what this, classic control gate looks like in the programming gate.
That should help as we get, more to the angstrom level. Things just simply get smaller and smaller. It's harder to put more stuff down. So use what you have better, and be able to free up space with these more efficient cores. Not an E-core, just a more effective one.
Yep.
That saves you from having to go crazy small.
Correct, it does. Well, and another thing that saves you is finally walking away from your decades-old GPU alignment within your little SoC that Samsung had, and allows you to be a lot more efficient in the US. So many of you may remember that most Samsung Galaxy phones use a Samsung, or don't use a Samsung processor at all in them. They use a what's it called, Chris?
ARM.
Yep. No, it's not. Samsung's still an ARM-based processor, but the actual designer of the.
Right.
Why can't I think of it?
I know it's a Snapdragon.
That's it.
Generally.
Qualcomm.
That's it. Yep.
It's a Qualcomm chip that they usually use. Well,
yep.
I think one of the reasons why was there was some kind of IPC, lawsuit back and forth between Samsung and Qualcomm over the GPU that was being used in the US. And so what did Samsung do? ladies and gentlemen, they partnered with AMD to put RDNA 2 in their Exynos chips so that they could launch them in the US. And so now they don't have to use Qualcomm chips, which is it kind of hurts Qualcomm, because Qualcomm was a big, they're a big part of those Galaxy phones. Now, if we go to this process here, it's going to be a very different setup. Also note that the AMD GPUs are going to be manufactured by Samsung on their 4nm EUV process. Guys, they are RDNA 2 design. Don't expect them to be RDNA 2, massive performance level. I mean, we're talking about, this is an SoC, guys. Small. Very small setup. Very small overall design for things. I'm sure it will compete. It'll probably be better than Qualcomm's mobile GPUs. But, I mean, we'll just have to see where we go from there. I know Qualcomm has been working to redesign a lot of their product lines. So we'll have to see exactly how this ticks off and goes. What's unique to this to me, though, is it's going to, like I said, it's going to allow like the Galaxy S22 to bring basically Exynos back to the US and help out in general. So we'll see if it does. We're not sure. We'll wait for the Galaxy S22 launch to see that, but that's what it's sounding like. Next up in the lovely, lovely format, Intel has an Alder Lake mobile chip that beats the 1950X Threadripper. Da, 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 da.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's not really that crazy when you think about it. It was the 1950. Didn't the 1950 only have 16 cores?
It did.
So, I mean, yeah. Now, granted, it also had a lot higher power budget. But realistically, guys, does this surprise anyone? Yeah.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't. This shouldn't surprise anyone. Now, for this to go and find a way to beat, a 3950, that would be shocking.
Yeah.
And I don't think it does that. I mean, it's definitely going to outright destroy both the 11980 HK and the 5900HX. It should. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. But it gets back to showing you where E-cores make sense here. Yes, we are a 6 big core and 8 little core part. But that's the point, guys. When it comes to mobile applications, that's all you need. A couple of big cores and a bunch of little cores. It'll be more power efficient overall while also being more powerful. So that's kind of huge. Outside of that, I mean, I don't really know a great way to word this other than, heck yeah, mobile might be getting to the point where it's on par. See, this is where I'm going to bring this up, especially because it comes back to laptops, and a lot of people these days work on laptops and do work off of laptops, right? So, what was the first generation? I want to think it's the 9 series. The 9000 series was the first time that we got 8-core laptop chips from Intel. And AMD kind of tried to start doing that.
Yeah.
We needed 8, but laptops have lagged behind for forever and a day. Even AMD couldn't get more than 8 cores on a laptop. Because all of those chips are they're not built like desktop chips are, where they're chiplets. They're built as monolithic dies. So 8 cores is all you could get out of AMD on a laptop. And even correct me if I'm wrong, but the AMD chips that are in the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, they're only 8 cores, right? Am I correct in that statement, Chris?
I don't check Xboxes a whole lot.
Well, but I mean, I don't know. Well, let's drop back and take a look together. So, how do we do this? I'm gonna look up the PlayStation 5.
Okay.
You look up the Xbox CPU and see what they tell you. Yep. PlayStation 5 is a 8-core. Yep, 8-core Zen 2 based. That's it. And I'll look at the Xbox real quick too. Yep, it's the same thing. Xbox is 8-core. Both of them have 16 threads, but they're all, go back and look at the way you want to look at it. They're CPUs designed around that kind of architecture and structure, guys. 8 cores max because it's all a monolithic die chip. So kind of a little disappointing. It's at this point that I want to kind of switch over. So, Chris, you and I were talking about this. I don't know why, and maybe Intel or Nvidia will get back to us and explain why, but they dropped the A5000, the A4000, and some of the A2000, like some of their other lineups that are currently out there from their product sheet.
And they didn't drop the A4. They added the A4500.
Well, no. But from the product sheet, they dropped the A5, they dropped the A4, they dropped the A2000 setup, and then they added the other new ones. So yes, you are correct. They didn't drop them; they put replacements in there. But realistically, guys, they're still available. It's just they're not trying to push them anymore because they've got these mid tiers that I think they're going to try to use as carryovers. Once again, supply constraints have been killing us for years. I'm ready to see these things finally get us. I'm ready for us to see them go away. The T1000 and I have spoken with some folks at Nvidia. The T1000, the T1000 8 gig. They're the A2006, the A2008, they're still there. The 4000, 5000, they're still going to be in the channel for a while, y'all. It's just that they're kind of trying to move people more towards those other SKUs.
I saw that. I got the end of life email from PNY, I think, about the 4000 and 5000 have officially been end of life.
They're still, and like I said, they're still going to remain in the channel because people will still.
Oh yeah,
them. They just will, but they're not gonna. I mean, they're not gonna try to push them when they've got the 4500. What they're trying to do is make more readily available parts to people. So the 2012 gig. I mean, it's not got more CUDA cores, but it's enough.
I actually just sold one of those.
2012.
Yep.
Nice. I mean, I think that the whole stack of the lineup's going to be great, guys. I mean, it's still a good lineup. They still meet and compare. I'm actually trying to talk to Nvidia about giving a true comparison between the A4500 and the actual W6800.
That would be snappy.
Well, I mean, because they should be about the same level of performance, in terms of core count and core capability. They should be about the same performance. The only difference being that one has 20 gigs of VRAM and the other has 32. They're also about the same price, too. Should be about the same price when found at MSRP. Now, the
about
last
$2,000?
Yeah, right around or right above $2,000. When you go to real world buying them, somewhere around $2,000 to $2,100.
Yeah.
That's really where you're going to see them. Now, the last story that we got, I'm not even going to bring up to show it off, but you can put in the stream, in the chat stream for everybody, so that everybody can kind of talk about it. But this is going to be a conversation for all of us, and that is I pulled it up in the wrong one. AMD officially announced the W6400. And then they also launched the 6500M and the 6300M for workstations. So yes, it's got a manageable price tag, and it should be available. It's only got a 50-watt power budget, which is kind of funny to me. Whereas the A2000 is a 70-watt. I'd love to see what the T1000 8 gig does. That would be a really and true comparison to this card. The T1000.
I might have to buy me a T1000 to test if we can get this big order.
Yeah, that's something that you and I would love to test. At that point, I would love to say, hey, let's, because that's the thing. These are the kind of cards that ought to be flying off the shelves the most, guys. So I'm going to bring it up, and like I said, this is how we're going to talk about it. Is AMD's launching the 6400 as the W6400 is like the king of all around workstations. Realistically, that's not a bad way to compare it. I mean, they should be launching as something that basically people everywhere should buy. I mean, it's going to be a okay GPU to put into normal modern workstations. This is not something you're going to go buy and put out in a 4-year-old workstation. It shouldn't be. It never should be. It's too old for that crap. Okay? Don't do that. But putting it in a modern workstation, not a bad idea. Now, it does only have 2 display outs. That is kind of the bummer. But that's okay. I mean, it's not designed to push. I mean, for the people that this card is for, workstation-wise, it's the perfect mark. It's designed to kind of compete with that T400, T1000 kind of card. And so that's the good thing to look at it, and a good way to look at it. Matter of fact, it's designed directly from a power consumption perspective to compete with the T1000 8 gig. So I mean, you can look at it that way, or the T1000 if you can find the 4 gig version. But that's really what it's designed to work with. Here's where the T1000 wins. It has 4 display outs. Right?
Yeah.
So that's just, you're not going to beat that. I hate to say it. That's where, like I said, that's where the T1000 is going to win. But once again, the 6400, the W6400 was it. So let's look at it this way. Somehow, some way, they fused some things off in the W6300M, which is the mobile version. The M and the W6300M and the W6400 have the same number of stream processors and compute units at 12. Infinity cache is lower at 8 megs, which 8 megabytes of L3 cache seems kind of silly when you think about it on a GPU. That's kind of stupendously low. It's also got a 32-bit memory interface because it's only got 2 gigabytes of GDDR6 at 16 gigabit per second. It does have 14 gigabit, 4 gigabytes of on the 6400. But once again, it's a 4x4 PCI Express 4x4 card. I mean, it was designed for a laptop, guys. It really was. And I'm not saying that these things can't be, for simple solutions, yeah, sure, these things could be perfect. But go out there and watch the reviews, and this is a great one to tell to people. Go watch the reviews, for instance, of the RX 6500 XT, and you'll hear just how bad a PCI Express 4x4 interface or PCI Express by 4 interface can be on PCI Express 3.0. So you'll learn very quickly why you wouldn't want to pair this with an older workstation. But with a brand new workstation, be the first to say, it's good for that. It is. It's great for that. And it'll probably be a little bit cheaper than the T1000 8 gig. I mean, so, there's that too. And because it's that by 4, thing, it's only 4 gigs of VRAM. It's probably not going to be, it's probably going to be in that same realm of discussion of being absolute garbage for mining. So, use it for that. You don't have to worry about them going out of stock for that kind of stuff. It's ultimately going to be a card that you could use and a card that you can find. So keep those in the back of your mind when you're looking for these things. I think that we kind of have to. I want to talk about this. Go ahead.
What
are you gonna say?
I was gonna say we're gonna stop the conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think we kind of need to have that conversation now. Donald's over there putting together a little PC. It's a baby PC.
But I think I'm just cooler be pulling and then replace move the case fans that were up front up top and have them exhaust.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Either way, it's not a huge deal. Whether the water cooler's on the front or the top, we just tend to. In that case, we tend to put it up top. But just like.
If anyone watching is wondering, this is a Alder Lake 12700K build. And something I've actually noticed is while it may not be labeled on the Fractal Design Celsius C36, it seems to be that it already is manufactured to accept LGA 1200 or LGA 1700 and doesn't need an adapter bracket for what I've got. It seems to work, or it looks like it's going to bolt up just fine in the 1700 slots.
And as I was explaining to him earlier, Chris, I think that's more a direct comparison of how we'll have to look at the Z height stuff with that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
are you able to get your screen share working, Brad? There we go.
Oh yeah, I can get the screen share working.
Okay.
So for those of you that would like to see what 64 logical cores of Intel Ice Lake are, that's it.
Oh!
It's also 128 logical threads of Intel processor.
It's so unnecessary.
I like when
Donald. It's not, but it is.
I like when Donald talks that it spikes up all the cores there.
Oh my god.
Yeah, if you look at it and you kind of mouse over some of the stuff, sometimes it'll tell you. So yeah, it'll actually tell you. So like that's CPU 63 node 1. So that's the actual 64th core of it. And if I go somewhere in here, there's 52, 59. There's 63.
That's crazy.
Of node 0, and then CPU 0 of node 1. So there's the changeover. I mean, I'm only using 28 gigs of memory right now, guys. Up 27.4, y'all. Sorry. I have 996 gigabytes available. So.
Of memory.
Of
not
memory.
Storage.
Yeah. It's 996 gigs available of memory. That is correct.
Oh my god.
all of my disk spaces.
I should say how load.
Yeah. I apologize. Like I said, this thing's it's not exactly perfect, but it's trying to be. I think it's partially the what's crapping out to the USB on the hub that I have here because I have it kind of overloaded. But what we can do now is we can close this session out. I'll brings back to this view. I'll say this much: it's going to be fun. We're going to do a lot of testing. There's still some bugs I got to work out. There's probably some drivers and stuff that I'm missing on the stop. I did order a TPM 2.0 module, Chris, so I will be getting it to Windows 11 here soon.
Yep.
I do need to check when that's going to show up so I can get that thing plugged in. That'll be awesome. But yeah, guys, it's as always, it's been a pleasure. I'm already starting to put together some stuff that I'm going to start putting down for the next episode. So maybe next weekend we'll do another one, depending on how everything's going with everybody. Next weekend will be the first Friday of the month, thankfully. So for all you out there in lovely live stream space, we say thank you for watching. This has been one of our shorter episodes, but I'm Brad.
Chris?
Donald.
And we'll say bye, y'all.